Hello, everyone. It's Jen. Thanks for joining us. I'm excited today to bring us some questions and answers around transition finances. So I am excited to introduce you to JJ Montanaro from USAA, and I will let him introduce himself, tell you a little bit about what he does over there, and then we'll get into some questions.
Great. Thanks,
JJ?
Jen. Great to be with you. Great to be with this group of seasoned spouses. I think that's pretty cool. And I first want to go ahead and give myself a little bit of props because I'm wearing green. Now,
You are.
I am.
I have a tiny bit.
Okay, I see it. So literally about 5 years ago, I was at some event at USAA and they gave me this shirt and it's literally sat in my closet for 5 years and I'm thinking, there's going to be some time when I'm going to need it. So today's the day.
Today's the day.
But
Awesome.
I'm actually by experience a financial planner, have done that since I got off of active duty in the Army some 25 years ago. And really since I've been at USA, I worked with members in our financial planning services back when we used to have that. And right now I'm on the military advocacy team. So I'm a relationship director there and have the opportunity to support great organizations and folks like you, Jen, and other type of things like this. We have three pillars. One is financial readiness, which is my area, but we also have meaningful careers for veterans and spouses, and military family resiliency are our three pillars on my team. So I'm in that financial lane, but have a lot of fun. Can't wait to get back out and see you, everybody out there live and face to face. But in the meantime, we're doing it this way.
I know. Yeah, JJ and I had the pleasure of meeting, gosh, was it 2 years ago in Garmisch, Germany during an AWAG conference, and it was
How miserable
it was
were we?
not terrible. It's not a bad location. It's a good gig if you can get it. So I think we all envy the vendors who get to come to those events from the States. It's a great way to get to see the country and to help support military families. So
yeah, that was great.
Cool.
I think I was telling you last week that I was on a Zoom call with that organization. They were talking about they're going to do it in some form or fashion, or the plan is to try to do it face to face with a smaller group. And I was literally in tears, just like, no, that's not a place I'll be going this year. But it is a great group and a great opportunity to support the military community for USAA.
Absolutely. We appreciate you guys are everywhere, and we appreciate the support for sure. Particularly, for me, you guys supporting the Evolve Retreat has been just really a blessing to us in terms of what it's allowed us to do for programming. So huge thanks to USAA and to you for always kind of having our backs in that regard. So let's get into a little bit of the topics that we're looking at for today. For transition finances, which can cover a lot of different things, but I wanted to just spend a few minutes kind of talking about some of the things that from your vast experience in this space. And so one question would be, when you look at kind of the timeline, because I think sometimes folks aren't sure, well, when's too early? When should we really start having some of these conversations about what we want our finances to look like in the time leading up to transition, but then also in that time after transition? So what would your advice be in that regard?
Well, it would go back to that Chinese proverb. The best time was probably to plant a tree years ago. And second best time is now. And I say that because it's pretty funny. I get the opportunity to do a lot of transition events. Never in front of a group of seasoned spouses. So I'm excited about that. But oftentimes, by the time we're talking about transition, for a lot of folks, it's within a year, it's within 6 months, or it's within just days. And I always chuckle because one of my key points of advice that I wrote down to talk about today was just the idea that, hey, you ought to have a stash of cash sitting aside so that if the transition doesn't go as smooth as you'd like, if maybe there's a gap in income where your family sees a drop in income, or whatever it might be, maybe you need to buy a house and you want a down payment, or you want to put some curtains in that house. I mean, there's so many things that you might need some cash. And for me to say, hey, USA's point of view is that you ought to have 9 to 12 months worth of your core expenses in cash. That's great advice, but not necessarily for somebody who's right on top of transition. So I think even if you don't see transition in your immediate future, it's something you can start preparing for, whether it's planning and doing some of the things we'll talk about today as far as looking at what's going to happen with your benefits, what your benefits are, or in this particular case that we're talking about, hey, putting aside money so that if everything doesn't go smoothly, you're prepared. And guess what? Nobody has come back to me after the fact and said, JJ, you're just an idiot. We had $10,000 in cash and we didn't know what to do with it. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, and I think, I've heard a lot of different ideas about, what that looks like. And I think, I'd be interested your perspective as well in terms of what you've seen in that it seems like, identifying your goals is a really key piece in terms of, does the service member intend to, get a different job right away? Does the spouse already have employment that allows you to, have something that's stable? But I know some people who really prioritize giving that service member a sort of the breathing room to spend the time to find really what they want and not feel like they have to, to take the first thing that's offered. And certainly having that financial stability is going to be the thing that really helps make that possible for them. And, as you said, hard if you're coming up on transition a little faster maybe than you thought you might. But just, I think that goal piece plays in a lot for people as well.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point, Jen. And really taking a look at what cash flow looks like today and what it's going to look like after you transition, because a lot of this group is going to have military retirement, so that's going to replace a chunk of income coming in. But you also have to look at, okay, if I look at my LES today or our LES today, oftentimes there could be 30 or 40% of that's basic allowance for housing. So when you think about 50% or whatever your number is of retirement, well, it's just of the basic pay, so it doesn't include that. So you're going to lose really valuable tax benefits. You're going to have a shrinkage of income there. So if the non-military spouse has an income stream through their own entrepreneurial efforts or through their employment, that, to your point, does really allow a pivot. But regardless of what the situation is, I think it's a great time to crunch those numbers again, well in advance of having them thrown upon you. I think one of my key messages is make it happen. This transition, as opposed to letting it happen to you. And so one of the ways that you can make it happen is really to crunch those numbers on the budget, to look at what things are going to be like and really be prepared.
Yeah, no, for sure. So in that sense, are there certain aspects of finances that you feel like people really forget to consider as it relates to transition, and maybe consider a little bit too late? They might think about the cash early, but then there's this other element that they don't necessarily consider. So what might that be?
Yeah, I always joke, and I don't know how you guys feel, but I felt like while I was serving, or while we were serving, I always complained about stuff, and maybe that's just human nature, maybe that's just me, I don't know. But complaining about benefits, complaining about the health care, and so on and so forth. And then, at least when it comes to the military, when you get on the other side of the fence, you realize, geez, there's some real goodness there in terms of whether it's the tax benefits, the housing, and allowances. Really, the whole package, the healthcare from a cost perspective is hard to beat. And so, if you're retiring, you're still going to be in pretty good shape. And what I would encourage everybody there to do is sign up with those organizations, MOA and various organizations, Blue Star Families, various organizations that are out there fighting for you, both while you're wearing the uniform or while your spouse is wearing the uniform, and when you're done, to ensure that those benefits that were promised stay in the same form or fashion. So I guess I lost my total train of thought.
No, you're good. Because you're so right. I think sometimes when we're in the midst of receiving all those benefits, especially if you've been in for, 20 some years, or, you're up in the teens and into the 20-year mark and over, it's, I think it is easy to just get sort of used to the fact that those are there and forget that. And I think I remember this when I'm very much a data person. So I have somewhere there's a spreadsheet, right, that kind of told me what retirement, what the funding piece. Of course, right. Oh my gosh, of course. But I remember realizing, and I think this was earlier on when I didn't really understand all the benefits. And so I had, okay, well, it's about half of, retirement's about half of income, not realizing, well, it's half of base, which is incredibly different. And so just really stripping down all the things so you really understand all the components and being able to, figure out, okay, this one stays, but maybe it gets a little more expensive. This one goes away entirely. And so how do we I hear a lot of people talk about like SGLI, how do we plan for that replacement? What does that look like? And I think we're going to talk about that in another session that we're going to do. But there are a lot of these elements that you really have to kind of lay out all the benefits and really see all the different things and figure out, okay, what's our plan for replacing each of these, if those are things we still want to have as part of our overall kind of finance plan, if you will.
Well said. Yeah. And I think, so my two CTAs, if you will, would be, one would be to your point, USAA.com/life. So if you're looking at that VGLI question, do I turn our SGLI into VGLI, or do I look at other alternatives, or do I not need any additional insurance at that point, would be a good resource for folks out there. The other one is, and I think we're going to have, either I'm going to be on, or I'm going to have somebody from our military life team come on, talk about our military life resources. So relative to this discussion, if you go to USA.com/leaving the military, we've got tools, calculators, checklists, information. And so I don't know about you. It sounds like you might be a checklist person.
I've done a few checklists and a few calculators in my life.
Yeah. So those can be really helpful to keep you on track, because there's a lot of things going on. So having something to anchor to can be very helpful.
No, absolutely. No, I love that. Let's see. So there was something you said and then I lost it. I was going to ask you another question.
You're not the only one?
No, not the only one. What was that? Oh man. So I guess I'll give you the floor for a minute. If there's anything else you wanted to mention as far as transition, we were talking about some myths. So I was curious if we've talked about timeline a little bit and kind of where that can trip people up, not planning ahead. But, are there other things that you've heard people say that, oh, this was harder than I thought, or this was easier than I thought as it relates to transition? Like that's kind of in that myth category.
So I think, to me, just in terms of how you approach it, I think the myth is that it's a finish line, leaving the military, because so often you're counting down, when is this deployment going to be over, and when are we going to leave? When are we going to PCS? When are we going to get done with school, so on and so forth. And so our whole approach, at least from my perspective, a lot of times is all about counting down.
Right.
And so when you look at this particular event, it to me, it's more of a start point. And so really need to prepare for it like that. And I've probably, I don't know, maybe worked with thousands of USAA members that were currently serving in the military over my time at USAA, and probably only a handful that truly retired. So I guess the other myth that came to mind when you were talking about myths to me was that, because you're probably not. I mean, there are some folks that will, but it'll probably be a small number, because the rest of everyone else is moving on to a second career, or moving on to something else, and that kind of supports that point I was just making. Hey, it's a beginning in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is very like a misnomer, because in corporate world, retiring, I think, has a little bit different meaning. And when you think about retirement in general, most people don't think, like I think my husband could have retired at 42. Like that's not normal, right? That doesn't happen. And so it does kind of, I think, people think, oh, you're gonna. Although we've always joked that he's going to stay home or coach a little league, or just, that was when we thought he'd retire at 20 and the kids were young enough that, he could have done that. But, there is that, that pipe dream that you're just going to, kind of stick your feet up and read your books and enjoy it. But I think what I find is a lot of service members are driven individuals. And so it doesn't appeal to them really to sort of just, sit and put their feet up. They want to still contribute. They want to still use their talents and continue to hone their skills. And so it's not as common, to your point, for folks to just, truly retire like you might when you're in your 60s or 70s.
And I think so that's a great point that leads into another one of what I would call myths, not maybe associated with this topic, but just the idea that I don't want to retire. So to me, that's the justification for why we're contributing to the TSP, why we don't have our IRAs or Roth IRAs. And my answer to that is, it's one of those things, kind of like being in the military. Sometimes whatever it is that you want may not be feasible because your spouse will say, hey, you may not want to, but I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Or the military will say, well, we appreciate you, but
Mm-hmm.
you're part of this great force shaping. So to me, I think that, so whenever I hear somebody say that, which is fairly often, my answer will be is, hey, if you do this, if you start to use the TSP, if you build on your systematic savings and do all those right financial things, all you'll do is create flexibility and options.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're not, by doing that, you're not committing to not working or committing to working, but I think you'll create flexibility, options, and choice. And that's what we all want, is to have choice to live whatever life we want to live.
Well, and I think for a lot of people, what it ends up doing is actually getting them to the true retirement line earlier, right? Like if you've planned, well, and your transition sort of, goes well, and you're able to move on to that second career, but you already have that financial stability going into it, then instead of retiring at, maybe 68, maybe you could retire at 64. Like that's not insignificant. And so
especially when you're close to 64. When somebody says 64, that's just not a distant window for you. All of a sudden, that means a lot more, Jen. Holy cow! I'm 64, but I can see it now that I couldn't see it before.
I don't even know what is the average like true retirement age now. Do you know? I don't even know that.
I don't know exactly what it is. I know one of the stats I read that's related was the number of people that take Social Security at 62 is a significant majority.
Okay, interesting.
So if you were to take Social Security at 62, essentially you'd be limiting other income that you could have without having the Social Security reduced. So that would probably be a pretty good number. But that's homework. So you gave me homework.
Yeah, sorry. When I threw out those numbers, I realized, maybe that's older than it should be. But to your point, like because I'm closer to 50 than 40, it doesn't sound that far away.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are good. I like that. I mean, I think those are all some really good myths. Are there any others that come to mind as you've worked with service members that, things they come into the process thinking one way and then learn it to be very different, or does that kind of cover the big ones?
I mean, I think we've hit, at least from a financial perspective, we've hit the big ones. And the key one there is, hey, have a plan, and that planning process can start, to your point, right up at the beginning, can start well before that transition is even on your mind. I mean, I always joke that we ought to be, as people enter the service, we ought to be talking to them about starting to build this this escape fund.
I haven't heard it called that before, but
I've never heard that before. Sometimes stuff just comes out. So
it's all good. It's all good. There's probably many people that feel that way. Well, so just so folks know, we are going to have JJ back or someone from USAA back for 2 additional videos like this, where we can just kind of spend a few minutes talking about, a few things that we know are important, particularly to this seasoned community. And also just give you guys a chance to answer your questions. So as JJ mentioned, we're going to talk about the SBP piece at some point, and then we're also going to talk about their kind of their military helping arm, if you will, and all the things that are available in that. So, and I'll drop the links that JJ mentioned into the comments so you guys can see those. If you caught this live, I hope you, said hi. Let us know if you're catching the replay. And if you have follow-up questions, let us know, because we can always roll those into potentially the next video as well.
We will. Let's do that.
We should do that, right? So before you hop off, though, I did want to make kind of a big announcement. I haven't mentioned this yet on our many of our socials. So in regards to the Evolve Retreat, we talked about at the very beginning how grateful we are for your support of that and USAA's support of that. But I wanted to also mention that USAA is generously giving $100 gift cards to 2 of our Evolve attendees. So we're super excited to be able to do that and to give back to 2 of our attendees in that way. So very grateful to you all for that. And I just wanted to make that announcement here while you were here to be thanked for it.
Right? There's no wiggle room now. No, we're excited about that. Excited about the opportunity.
Did I not mention that, JJ? Did I not tell you?
No, it's great. Again, we're excited to be a part of this, and again, love a lot of the ideas that are coming out of these crazy times that allow us to come together, even if it's not face to face, it does allow us to connect with you and you guys to connect with each other. So it's a beautiful thing.
No, it really is. Like I think as much as we've taken the good that could have come from this really hard time, I think in many ways we have. Originally, this retreat was only intended to be a really small thing at one location. And now, because of all the technologies, we can do it, as a global event. We have people coming from Germany. We have people coming from all over. So it's exciting to have the ability.
I would have volunteered to go to Germany.
As would I, for sure.
No, great stuff, Jim.
Great. All right. Well, JJ, we appreciate your time and we look forward to having you back.
All right. Take care. Everyone have a good day.
You too. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you being here and we will talk to you soon. Take care.